are solid state and tube timber, as well as
It's noticeable to me that when I use a 4K mouse, it just feels more responsive.
you can go as fast as you can without trying to go on. Hello YouTube, and welcome back to another video. Today we're looking at the Errennir Gecko. I actually have to admit that I almost forgot I even needed to review this pad just because I've already shielded it so much and so many people I know have already bought it. So with that being said, it isn't hard to guess that my review for this pad is going to be overwhelmingly positive. Cutting the rest of the chit chat, let's jump straight into the quick summary. The Errennir Gecko is perhaps the best TAC FPS pad I have ever tried, and also one of the best all-rounder pads on the market. It's a smooth pad with a touch of clothy roughness that is also sleeve friendly, and it's perfectly balanced between speed and control. Despite their marketing stating it's a speed pad, I definitely wouldn't consider the Gecko to be a speed pad, and if it feels too fast for you, then I can only say that is a skill issue. Unfortunate for you, my viewer, you're just not good enough. This pad floats around that ideal speed range in my opinion. Now there are a few other pads that have extremely similar characteristics and are well balanced between speed and control, such as the PureTrack P51 Mustang, so we'll talk about that later. Now going into details, features, and unboxing. The Errennir Gecko comes flat shipped in an envelope kind of thing, and I won't show you guys because it's all stock standard stuff nowadays. The pad measures in at 500 by 500 by 3.5 millimeters thick, and it retails for approximately $40 US or 80 AUD from Osmod Shop for those of us that are in OCE. The pad is only available in one size and one softness, being extremely firm. There is also a translucent Gecko logo on the bottom right here that actually changes color depending on the lighting and viewing angle that you look at it from, which is very neat. For the most part, it's a light bluish color and can change to a light pink or brownish red color that I can't really describe. Now, another benefit is that the Gecko is actually a pad that can have printed designs, though I do reckon that will slightly alter the surface feeling, but nonetheless, it means you guys can keep your eyes out for potential design releases or collaborations. Now moving into more details, firstly, the base. The base is perhaps the most unique feature of the Gecko. It features what they call a sticky silicon film sandwich, and if you ask me, it's quite frankly a terrible name. In summary though, the base of the pad is actually two separate materials glued together, which is why they called it a film sandwich. The top section is actually Poron based, I believe, while the bottom section is a custom silicon base. Now what does this actually do? Well, firstly, the Gecko is probably the grippiest mousepad base you will ever come across right now. And no, this isn't a bad thing, as in, it's not that the pad will stick to your table and you just cannot remove it. As you can see, I can just lift it off like that. However, if you were to pull the pad in the x-axis, as in if I were to pull the pad in the x-axis after I've pushed it down, it will stick. And by stick, I mean you can literally place it on the front of a car and you can pull the car using the pad. Like yes, you can drag over a ton. If you need confirmation, my bros Stubby and Paradox have shown this in their Twitter videos. Now obviously in practice, the pad does not move on your table at all and gets the highest grade possible. Secondly, Errennir intended for this pad to be extremely firm, and I can confirm this is probably one of the firmest, if not the firmest cloth pad I have ever used. Yet somehow, this pad still feels like it responds to pressure and slows down a bit if you were to push into the pad, which is simply phenomenal. Another thing to note is that despite the pad being 3.5mm thick supposedly, it still feels thicker than other 3.5mm pads that I have tried in the past, and I really like that. All in all, this base is easily one of the best I've ever tried, but also keep in mind that this might be because it's combined with this surface. I'm really curious, if we used a different surface fabric on the same base, would the base still be as positive as this? Now, stitching on the Gecko needs no talk either. This is surface level stitching of the highest quality, and I have nothing else to say. All pads now should be reaching the standard, and thankfully pretty much all pads do. Texture on the Gecko is smooth, as in, this pad is reaching around that peak smoothness level. However, despite the smoothness, it retains a tinge of clothy, rough texture. To better explain what I mean by this, I think it's time we put some context. For example, Pads like the Energon Pro or their ESP Tiger Triune are peak smoothness and don't really have any clothy feel. Instead, they feel like a wetsuit or sportswear or stocking, whatever you like to call it. In the case of other smooth pads like the Pulsar ES2 and PureTrack P51 Mustang, those are also smooth pads, but they have a bit more of a silky smooth clothy feel. And lastly, you have pads like the Artisan Zero and the GSR, which are truly clothy feeling pads but also feel much rougher than the other ones I mentioned previously. Now in the case of the Gecko, it is very slightly less smooth than that of the ES2 and P51 Mustang. It adds a bit of that Artisan Zero clothy rough feeling, but it's only just a little, right? And it's still an overall smooth pad. Yet the very slightly rougher clothy feel also makes the pad feel much more controllable, even if the speed isn't necessarily lower than some other pads. So in summary, that is a very nice experience and why I rate it for the TAC FPS. Moving into arm sleeves. The Gecko is arm sleeve friendly. Right, with the Lizard Skins performance here, it's simply excellent. The arm sleeve glide is very slightly behind that of the PureTrack P51 Mustang, but nonetheless, it's far beyond acceptable realms. It's significantly better than, say, the Saturn Pro. As usual, there is a bit of directionality with the weave and sleeve interaction, which is present in all mousepads. Right. The variation, however, is what's important, and in the case of the Gecko, the variation is not very drastic between doing x-axis movements and y-axis movements, so it's not significant enough to cause any inconsistencies, and is simply fantastic. Now what I mean by that is sometimes when you have your forearm, you do circular motion rather than directly left to right horizontal or vertical. So in the case, when you reach sort of an angle, it becomes a bit more y-axis than x-axis, and depending on if there's a lot of change in the friction, you might have inconsistencies. Finally, talking about speed and control. The Errennir Gecko is a medium speed pad, or as others like to call it, a balanced pad. It's not too fast and not too slow, just about right for everything. To make it easier, we can describe some comparisons. So firstly, the PureTrack P51 Mustang, the Gecko feels very slightly slower, but after putting a bit of time on both pads, I really think the differences are mostly negligible. The Gecko is faster than that of the Artisan Zero, Saturn Pro, Kurosan Samurai. It's also slower than the Lethal Gaming Gear Neptune, or Infinity Mice Infinite Speed, Ruin, or 414 Aero. There is a perfect amount of speed on the Gecko to never feel like you're stuck and can't move your mouse during intense moments, but it also never feels too fast, as if it's going to be uncontrollable and you're going to fly off. Especially with the slightly clothy texture, providing a bit more mental reassurance. Now, this is the real deal. So who should buy the Errennir Gecko? The Gecko. Well, everyone. I think everyone should buy a Gecko. That's all. Once again, thanks to Errennir for providing this review unit, and a big congratulations on the creation of such a fantastic product. In the current market, where every pad is starting to be great in some form or way, the Gecko manages to take it a step further by being great in all aspects. I look forward to seeing what future products Errennir will create, and who knows, maybe if I harass them enough, they'll let me release a Yifeng Edition Gecko. Until then, see you guys in the next video.